3 weeks into my job as a billionaire's executive assistant, I found a key hidden behind a family portrait and proof that the empire celebrating its centennial in 72 hours was built on my father's stolen patents and his suicide. I'm Rothwell's newest hire, brought in to organize their 100-year celebration. Instead, I'm holding a brass key that's been hidden behind the patriarch's smiling face for 17 years. I should have reported it. I didn't. Cole Innovations, my father's name. His patents, worth $1.2 billion now. He got nothing, except a grave when I was 12. The gala is in 72 hours, 500 guests, international press, a keynote speech celebrating innovation and integrity. My father's innovations, their integrity. I can take whatever they offer to stay quiet, or I can burn their celebration to the ground with the truth. 72 hours, and I haven't decided what I'm willing to destroy. Welcome to American Billionaire Tales. 68 hours to the gala. I sat at my desk the next morning like nothing had happened, like I hadn't spent half the night in a bank vault holding proof that my father was robbed and then erased. My name is Sabine Cole, executive assistant to the Rothwell family office. 3 weeks employed, 17 years a victim. I just didn't know it until yesterday. I answered emails, confirmed RSVPs, smiled at the facilities manager when he dropped off more centennial programs. 100 years of innovation and integrity. The gold lettering caught the light like a taunt. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I'd learned to stop that when I was 12, when the casket was closed and my mother couldn't stop crying, and someone had to sign for the flowers. On my lunch break, I researched Cole Innovations, the company my father built in our garage, while I did homework at the workbench beside him. The company that was supposed to be my inheritance. The patents from Cole Innovations became the core of Rothwell's medical device division, pacemaker technology, surgical instruments, devices in hospitals on 5 continents. Current valuation, $1.2 billion. Edmund Cole received nothing. His name appears nowhere. My mother shelves books for minimum wage. I answer phones for the family that made her a widow. I found the news clipping from 17 years ago. Local inventor found dead, business failure cited. 8 sentences. No mention of Rothwell, no investigation, no follow-up. The erasure was complete. The calendar reminder flashed. Gala seating chart review, 2 p.m. I closed the browser, straightened my desk, walked into the conference room to arrange place cards for 500 people celebrating the theft of my father's life. 66 hours to the gala. I wasn't shaking. I was building a case. That evening, I took the train to Queens. My mother's apartment hadn't changed in 17 years. Same floral sofa, same lace curtains, same photograph of my father on the bookshelf, the only one she kept out, and she'd turned it slightly toward the wall years ago. Couldn't look at it. Couldn't put it away. Margaret Cole was watching television when I arrived. Jeopardy! She always said my father would have cleaned up on Jeopardy! We talked about nothing. The weather, the library, my new job. The Rothwell family, she said, pouring tea with hands that trembled. That's impressive, sweetheart. Your father would be proud. I almost told her. The confession pressed against my teeth, but I watched her hands shake as she set down the teapot. The same tremor she'd had since the funeral, since the bankruptcy, since the closed casket. And I remembered. This woman has been surviving for 17 years on the story that Edmund Cole failed. I couldn't give her the truth until I knew what it would cost her to hear it. After she went to bed, I found myself in my old bedroom. A sewing room now. My mother's way of filling space with purpose. In the closet, behind bolts of fabric, I found a box I'd never opened. Edmund's watch. Stopped at 3:47. The hour, I realized, they found him. And a photograph. Him holding me as a baby. His smile so wide it crinkled his eyes. He was barely 30 in that picture. I'm 29 now. Someday I'll be older than my father ever got to be. I touched his face in the photograph. The paper was soft from years of someone else touching it too. Edmund's watch, wound and alive again. I wound the watch. It started ticking. 62 hours to the gala. And somewhere in my mother's closet, there might be more. Notebooks, letters. Proof she'd been protecting because she didn't know what else to do. I wasn't ready to ask her, not yet, but I was done waiting for permission. 60 hours to the gala. I was alone in the office past midnight, sorting seating charts. The skeleton crew had gone home hours ago. I told myself I was being thorough. I was actually searching Leander Rothwell's calendar for any meeting that might connect him to coal innovations. I found nothing. Either he was clean, or he was careful. The elevator chimed. Leander Rothwell walked in like he owned the building. Because he did. He'd come from a board meeting. I could tell by the loosened tie, the rolled sleeves, the exhaustion he wasn't bothering to hide. His suit jacket was gone. His dark hair fell forward instead of staying swept back. He looked less like an heir and more like a man who'd spent 8 hours defending something he wasn't sure he believed in. He stopped when he saw me. "You're still here?" Not a question, not quite surprise. "Seating charts," I said. "The Hendersons can't be near the Castellanos. Something about a yacht." He almost smiled. Almost. Old money feuds. They never forget. "Have you eaten?" I hadn't. I didn't say so. He ordered food anyway. Didn't ask what I wanted. Just called someone and said, "The usual," and "enough for two." 20 minutes later, there was Thai on the conference table. He'd remembered I'd mentioned pad Thai once, 3 weeks ago, my first day. And then the coffee. He brought me a cup himself, oat milk, half sweet. I'd never told him my order. He'd noticed anyway. Our fingers brushed on the handoff. Held 2 seconds too long. I should have pulled away faster. I didn't. "My father," he said, staring at the window and the city beyond, "would have had this gala locked down a month ago. Every detail, every contingency. He didn't believe in uncertainty, said it was weakness." Was he wrong? He looked at me then. Really looked. Past the assistant, past the professional distance, past whatever role he'd assigned me in his mental org chart. He was never wrong. That was the problem. Even when he was cruel, he was right. I keep trying to figure out how to do this differently. Lead without... He stopped, shook his head. "Sorry, you didn't stay late to hear about my father." "No, I stayed late because of your father." But I didn't say that. Instead, I said, "It sounds like he left you a lot to carry." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. That someone had seen the weight instead of the inheritance. We talked for another hour. About the gala, about pressure, about the strange loneliness of inheriting an empire you're not sure you want. He didn't ask personal questions, but he listened when I answered them anyway. Sideways. Fragments. At 2 a.m, he walked me to the elevator. His hand hovered near my back, but didn't touch. 60 hours, he said. 58, I corrected. He smiled. the first real one I'd seen. That smile. I filed it away where I shouldn't have. 54 hours to the gala. The coffee was cold in my apartment by the time I made the decision. Photographs weren't enough. Copies could be dismissed. Metadata questioned. A lawyer like Fletcher Crane, I'd met him once, the family counsel with eyes that evaluated everything, would shred digital evidence in deposition. I needed the originals, proof I could hold in my hands, and refuse to let go. The vault was quieter the second time. Colder. Or maybe that was me. I used my Rothwell credentials again, the access tied to the family account that no one had thought to restrict. Assistant privileges. The keys to every door, as long as you remembered to be invisible. I took the entire folder this time. The leather was heavier than I remembered. 17 years of secrets pressed into cracked brown hide. As I lifted it, a photograph slipped out, one I'd missed before. Edmund Cole and Alastair Rothwell, shaking hands, smiling. Dated 6 months before the hostile takeover. I turned it over. On the back, in my father's handwriting, partnership agreement signed. The beginning of something great. Alastair smiled at my father and then destroyed him. He stood in my father's workshop. I recognized the workbench behind them, the pegboard, with tools arranged just so, and shook his hand like a partner, like a friend. And 6 months later, he took everything. I thought about Leander's coffee, oat milk, half sweet. The way he'd said his father was never wrong, even when he was cruel. I wondered if cruelty came with the name. The stock portfolio, the corner office with the portrait on the wall. Or was Leander different? I couldn't afford to find out, not yet. I took the folder, I took the photograph, this one I kept for myself, and I walked out of the bank with evidence that could end the Rothwell centennial in scandal. 52 hours. My apartment at 2 in the morning. Original documents spread across my kitchen table. Coffee going cold again. Edmund's watch ticking on my wrist. The patents. The acquisition agreements. The timeline proving my father signed over his life's work under duress, then died 3 months later. I could walk away, return the documents, keep the job, survive. I'd been surviving my whole life. I was 29 years old, and I'd never stopped surviving long enough to live. I opened a new document, started typing Edmund Cole, Cole Innovations, Timeline of Acquisition. I wasn't building a case for lawyers anymore. I was building a weapon. And in 52 hours, I'd have to decide whether to use it. 50 hours to the gala. No sleep, no food, just the dig. The 48-page timeline I'd built was just the skeleton. Now I was looking for the organs, the machinery that made Edmund Cole disappear. I cross-referenced patent filings with SEC documents, corporate acquisition records with press releases, the Rothwell Foundation annual reports with the dates my father's name stopped appearing anywhere. What I found wasn't a hostile takeover. It was an assassination. Alastair didn't outbid my father. He didn't outmaneuver him in open market. He had someone on Edmund's board feeding him information, meeting schedules, negotiation strategies, the exact moment my father was most vulnerable. I found the press release from 17 years ago. Cole Innovations collapses after failed expansion. Founder blamed for mismanagement. Planted. The entire narrative was planted. There was no failed expansion. There was a coordinated campaign to make Edmund Cole look incompetent, while Rothwell stripped his patents in a private transaction. But here's what stopped my breath. Edmund fought back. I found the letters, legal threats, demands for arbitration. My father who I'd been told gave up, who I'd spent 17 years believing was too weak to fight. He fought like hell. I have retained counsel and intend to pursue all legal remedies available to me, he wrote in January. Your client's acquisition of Cole Innovations patents was achieved through fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. He was going to sue. He was going to win. And then, nothing. 3 months of legal threats, letters to regulators, demands for investigation. And then, in March, silence. Complete silence. No lawsuit filed, no counsel on record, no follow-up to any regulatory complaint. He just stopped. 3 weeks later, he was dead. I stared at Edmund's watch on my wrist. The second hand swept past 3:47, the hour they found him, and kept going. Something made him stop fighting. Someone took the last thing he had, hope that justice was possible, and left him with nothing. The question isn't what Alistair stole. The question is what he did to make my father give up. My phone buzzed. A calendar reminder. Working dinner with LR, 7 p.m. Gala Logistics. Leander's initials. The son of the man who destroyed my father. I couldn't refuse without raising suspicion, and I couldn't go without carrying this rage like a bomb in my chest. 48 hours to the gala, and I was having dinner with the enemy. The restaurant was the kind of place I couldn't afford to look at the menu. Cloth napkins, candles, sommelier who appeared like magic with a bottle that cost more than my rent. Leander sat across from me, tie loosened, sleeves rolled to his forearms, the uniform of a man who'd been working all day and intended to work all night. He looked tired. Human. Dangerously human. I was acutely aware of the folder in my bag. Copies of everything. Proof that could destroy him. He sensed something he couldn't name. I could see him studying me. Not the way bosses study assistants, checking for competence. The way someone studies a person they're trying to understand. You're distracted tonight, he said. Not accusatory. Curious. Big week. I kept my voice neutral, professional. Sabine. First time he'd used my first name outside of email signatures. You've been distracted for days. Since Wednesday, actually. Since I found the key. Since the office that night, he finished. Did I say something wrong? No, you said everything right. That's the problem. We talked about the gala, seating, speeches, the impossible logistics of celebrating 100 years in a single evening. And then he said, "My father never once told me he was proud of me." I looked up. Every speech I've ever given, every deal I've ever closed, he'd find the flaw, the thing I should have done differently. The speech I'm supposed to give Friday, celebrating his legacy? I've written it 11 times, and every time I hear his voice telling me it's not good enough. Under the table, his knee brushed mine. Neither of us moved. My father died when I was 12, I heard myself say. True. Incomplete. His eyes softened. I'm sorry. I keep thinking... I stopped. The confession rose in my chest. I could tell him, right now, who I am, what I found, what his father did to mine. He leaned forward, waiting, listening like no one had listened to me in years. My phone shattered the moment. A text from an unknown number. We should discuss your research. FC. Fletcher Crane. He knows. I stared at the screen. 5 words. 25 years of Rothwell secrets, and the man who'd buried them all had just introduced himself. Leander was still watching me. Bad news? I forced a smile. Work thing. The lie tasted like ash. I should go, I said. Early morning. He nodded, but something in his eyes, disappointment, confusion, made me ache. At the door, he caught my arm, gentle. The touch lasted 3 seconds. Whatever it is, he said, you can tell me. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But the man who buries secrets was waiting, and I couldn't trust anyone until I knew how deep the rot went. 44 hours to the gala. The parking garage beneath Rothwell Tower was empty at this hour. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the same cold light as the bank vault. I was starting to associate that color with secrets. Fletcher Crane materialized from a shadow, like he'd been waiting there for hours. Maybe he had. He was exactly as I remembered from the staff meeting. Mid-50s, thinning salt and pepper hair, eyes that evaluated everything and gave away nothing. His suit was charcoal, his tie was burgundy, and his posture said he'd done this kind of thing before. Many times before. Ms. Cole. He didn't extend his hand. Maiden name Cole. Father, Edmund Cole, founder of Cole Innovations. Deceased. He'd run a background check. Standard procedure for anyone with family office access. My name triggered a flag. I've served this family for 25 years, he continued. His voice was soft, patient. The patience of a man who'd buried better threats than me. I've seen problems larger than this resolve quietly. I've seen problems smaller than this destroy careers. Are you threatening me, Mr. Crane? I'm explaining options. What happens next is your choice. But the gala is in 44 hours, and Mr. Rothwell will need to be informed. Mr. Rothwell, not Leander. The corporate distance was deliberate. Did you know about my father? He paused, the first crack in the professional mask. I know many things, Ms. Cole. His voice dropped, almost imperceptible. Some of them I've spent 2 decades trying to forget. Then he was walking away, footsteps echoing, leaving me alone under the fluorescent buzz. 25 years. He'd been there when Edmund signed the partnership agreement. He'd probably drafted the documents that transferred the patents. He knew where every body was buried because he'd helped dig the graves. And now, he was going to tell Leander. By morning, Leander would know that the woman he brought coffee to, oat milk, half sweet, noticed without asking, was the daughter of the man his father destroyed. He wouldn't see me anymore. He'd see a threat, a lawsuit waiting to happen, a scandal with legs. I had maybe 12 hours before the confrontation. I wasn't ready. But the clock didn't care. I'm at 40 hours to the gala. Leander's office door closed behind me with the weight of a verdict. He was standing at the window, his back to me. The Manhattan skyline stretched behind him, glass and steel and money, all the way to the horizon. Alistair's portrait hung on the wall to his right, watching us both. The patriarch who'd started everything, the ghost who wouldn't let go. When Leander turned, his face was unreadable. Fletcher told me. The silence had weight. Is it true? You're Edmund Cole's daughter? I could have lied, bought myself time, played the innocent. I was tired of playing. Yes. He didn't move, didn't blink. Just stared at me like I'd transformed into something he didn't recognize. Did you take this job to destroy us? I took this job because my firm collapsed and I needed work. True. I had no idea until I found the key. I didn't even know my father had a connection to Rothwell. True. I came here to survive, not to... But you know now. His voice was quiet, controlled, the voice of a man holding something back. And you have documents. And the gala is in 40 hours. Yes. He sat down, put his head in his hands. I'd seen grief before. This was something else, closer to vertigo. I didn't know. His voice was muffled. Sabine, I swear to you, I didn't know what my father did. I watched him, the curve of his shoulders, the way his fingers pressed against his temples. He looked like someone who'd just been told the foundation of his house was rotten. And I believed him. It didn't change anything. Your ignorance doesn't undo what happened, I said. My father is still dead. His name is still erased. Your family still celebrates his stolen work every time someone walks into this building. He looked up. His eyes were wet. I hadn't expected that. I know. I know it doesn't change anything. But I need you to understand. I'm not my father. Aren't you? The suit, the office, the portrait on the wall, the speech you're writing to honor his legacy. What do you want? He asked. What would make this what? Better? Okay? Nothing makes this okay. My father killed himself, Leander. 3 months after your father stole his life's work, he put a gun in his mouth because he had nothing left. He closed his eyes. I didn't know, he whispered. I didn't know he couldn't finish. I stood there, holding 17 years of grief and rage, watching the man I'd almost trusted shatter under the weight of truth. I should have felt triumph. I felt nothing. I need time, he said finally, to figure out how to... We don't have time. The gala is in 40 hours. He looked at me, really looked, past the assistant, past the threat, to something he was still trying to understand. Meet me tomorrow. The bank. The vault. Let me try to fix this. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I walked out. And somewhere behind me, Alistair's portrait kept smiling. 36 hours to the gala. Settlement deadline, midnight tonight. The vault anteroom was exactly as I remembered. Brass and steel, cold light, the architecture of billionaire secrets. But now, Leander sat across from me at the small consultation table, and the power dynamic was inverted. He wasn't the heir summoning an assistant. He was a man trying to buy his way out of a reckoning. He slid a folder toward me. Legal paper, Rothwell letterhead. $20 million. His voice was steady, but his hands weren't. An education fund for your mother. All your debts cleared. A new identity, if you want it. Sign by midnight tonight. The gala is Friday. $20 million. I stared at the number. More money than my father ever made. More than my mother would see in 10 lifetimes of library work and evening shifts. You're asking me to sell my father's grave. I'm asking you to let me fix this without destroying everything. He leaned forward. Sabine, the gala is in 36 hours. If this goes public, what? Your celebration gets ruined? You have to admit your father was a thief. 14,000 people lose their jobs. I stopped. The Rothwell Foundation shuts down, he continued. Every nurse at Rothwell Memorial, every researcher on our medical grants, every pension fund we support, they all go down too. You think my father was the only one who benefited? The patents he took became pacemaker technology. They're in hospitals on 5 continents. They save lives every day. My father's inventions, saving lives, under someone else's name. Is that supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to make you think about who gets hurt if you burn this down. He held my gaze. I'm not asking you to forgive what he did. I'm asking you to let me make it right, without destroying 14,000 people who had nothing to do with it. The question hung in the cold air. If the only way to clear your father's name is to destroy innocent people, is justice still justice? Or does it become revenge dressed in righteousness? I stood. You have until midnight Thursday. So do I. I walked out of the vault. The brass door closed behind me with the weight of a choice not yet made. 36 hours to the gala, 12 hours to the deadline, and I still didn't know who I was willing to destroy. 32 hours to the gala. I was packing my desk when he found me. The centennial programs sat in a stack on the corner, 100 years of innovation, waiting to be distributed to 500 guests who would never know whose innovations they were celebrating. I put the stapler in my box, the spare phone charger, the photograph of my mother I'd kept in my drawer. I didn't belong here. I never had. Don't go. His voice came from the doorway. Not like this. I didn't look up. Like what? Like someone who found out your family destroyed mine? Like someone you tried to pay off? That's not... He stepped into the office. The door swung shut behind him. I wasn't trying to pay you off. I was trying to... What? Make it go away? Silence me with money like your father silenced everyone else? Protect you. Protect both of us. Find a way through this that doesn't end with everyone losing. My father already lost. 17 years ago. Where was his way through? He stepped closer. Too close. I could smell his cologne. Something expensive, subtle. The scent I'd noticed during late nights and coffee moments I was trying to forget. Like someone He stopped, swallowed. His hand reached toward me. I was shaking. I hated that I was shaking. Like someone I can't stop thinking about. His voice was barely above a whisper. Even now, even knowing what this means, even knowing you might destroy everything I have, I keep thinking about the coffee, the dinner, the way you looked at me like you saw something worth seeing. His hand touched my arm. Gentle. The same way he'd touched me at the restaurant door. I looked up. Our faces were inches apart. I could feel his breath, see the slight tremble in his jaw. The want in his eyes was unmistakable and terrifying. I wanted to close the distance. My body knew before I did. I turned away. I can't. My voice broke slightly. Not until I know what you'll do. What I'll do? He didn't step back. Sabine, I'm standing here telling you, words. I need to see what you do when no one's watching. When the gala is tomorrow, and the speech is written, and you have to choose between your father's legacy and the truth. Then I'll know who you are. Sabine, I didn't look back. The elevator was empty. I pressed the button for the lobby and watched the floors count down. My reflection in the polished steel showed a woman who'd just walked away from something she wanted, something that might have been real. I'd trusted smiles before, learned what they cost. 32 hours to the gala. The settlement sat unsigned, and somewhere in that glass tower, Leander Rothwell was standing alone in an empty office, wondering if I'd burn it all down. 28 hours to the gala. The settlement deadline was in 16 hours. I sat in my Brooklyn apartment with the documents spread around me like a crime scene. The photographs, the patent filings, the legal letters that proved my father fought back until he didn't. The settlement NDA glowed on my laptop screen. $20 million. One signature, my father's name buried forever. Or walk into that gala and burn everything down. I didn't sign. Instead, I opened a file I'd been avoiding, the one Fletcher's name had appeared on. The correspondence folder from Cole Innovations' final months. And I found it. The last letter Edmund Cole ever sent to Alastair Rothwell. Dated 3 weeks before his death. My father's handwriting. Shaking slightly, I could see it in the loops, the pressure of the pen. I trusted you. I believed you when you said partnership. My daughter will grow up knowing her father was a failure because of what you did. I hope you never know peace. I read it 3 times. He'd written about me, about what I would think of him, about the story I'd grow up believing. He didn't know I'd find this letter 17 years later. Didn't know I'd spend my life thinking he was weak when he was actually broken. The settlement deadline was in 16 hours. The gala was in 28. And somewhere in Queens, my mother had a box of notebooks I'd never asked to see. I knew what I needed to do next. 26 hours to the gala. I stood in my mother's doorway, coat still on, my father's watch heavy on my wrist. I hadn't called ahead, hadn't slept, hadn't eaten anything that wasn't coffee in 2 days. Margaret looked up from the couch. Jeopardy was on. The volume was low. Sabine? Her voice carried the same careful neutrality it always had when she sensed something coming. What's wrong? Did Dad keep notebooks? No preamble, no protection. I was done with both. Journals, anything about his work. Her hands froze on the teacup. The silence stretched until I could hear the clock on her wall. Then, slowly, there's a box in my closet. I couldn't look at them, but I couldn't throw them away either. I found them behind the fabric bolts, a banker's box taped shut. 17 years of dust on the lid. Inside, notebooks, 5 of them, different sizes. His handwriting on every page. Sketches, formulas, prototype designs I recognized from the Rothwell medical device catalog, the pacemaker components, the surgical instruments. My father's work, his mind, his life. All of it stolen, and here was the original. But it was the journal entries that stopped my breath. The early ones were hopeful. Meeting with Rothwell tomorrow. Alastair says partnership. I want to believe him. Then darker. They're taking everything. Lawyers say I have no case. Margaret says fight, but with what? I have nothing left. And the last entry, dated 1 week before he died. Sabine's birthday next week. I don't know how to face her. I built her nothing. I am nothing. I read that line 3 times. He was thinking of me. At the end, when he believed he'd failed, when he couldn't see a way through, he was thinking about my birthday. He didn't give up because he was weak. He gave up because they took everything, his work, his name, his hope, and left him with nothing but shame. My mother stood in the doorway. She hadn't read them. 17 years, and she'd never read them. I looked at her, the trembling hands, the eyes that avoided the photograph on the bookshelf. I'm on every page, every margin, every breath he took. She started to cry. I didn't. The watch on my wrist read 9:47 p.m. The settlement deadline was in 14 hours. And I finally understood what Alastair Rothwell took from my father. not just patents, not just money. He took the belief that Edmund Cole was worth anything at all. 22 hours to the gala, settlement deadline, 6 hours. I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by 17 years of evidence, the patent files, the notebooks, the photograph of Edmund and Alastair shaking hands. My father's watch ticking on my wrist. And on my laptop screen, the settlement NDA. $20 million. Cursor blinking at the signature line. I imagined both futures. Option A, I walk into the Waldorf tomorrow night. 500 guests, international press. Leander at the podium, beginning the speech that celebrates his father's legacy of innovation. I project the documents on the screen behind him. Cole Innovations, Edmund Cole. Suicide 3 months after Alastair Rothwell stole everything he built. Criminal investigation, headlines. My father's name finally spoken in the building that erased him. And then, Rothwell stock collapses. 14,000 employees lose their jobs. The medical research grants disappear. The pacemaker technology, my father's technology, stops saving lives because the company that manufactures it no longer exists. Leander loses everything. I become the woman who burned an empire. Unemployable. Alone. But right. Option B. I sign. $20 million. My mother never worries again. My debts vanish. I start over, somewhere else. Someone else. The gala proceeds perfectly. Leander gives the speech. Alastair's portrait keeps smiling from the wall. My father stays erased. Forever. I become complicit in the final cover-up. But safe. But surviving. The screen lit up. Unknown number. Then a name. Leander. I know you haven't signed. I'm not going to threaten you. I just need you to know. I'm trying to find a third way. I don't know if there is one. I stared at the text. He wasn't treating me like a threat to be managed. He was treating me like a person whose answer mattered. The almost kiss hung in the air, his hand on my arm, the breath between us. If I'm wrong about him, I lose everything. If I'm right about him... I looked at my father's notebooks, the last entry. I am nothing. Edmund Cole didn't get a choice. Alastair took everything and never looked back. But Leander isn't Alastair. He might be, but he might not be. The only way to know is to see what he does when no one is forcing his hand. When the speech is written, when the gala is ready, when he has to choose between his father's legacy and the truth. Is there a third way? Maybe. But it would require something I hadn't given anyone in 17 years. Trust. 20 hours to the gala. Settlement deadline, 4 hours. I read my father's last notebook entry one more time. I am nothing. He wrote that because Alastair Rothwell took everything and never looked back. Never offered a choice. Never gave him a chance to fight on equal terms. But Leander isn't Alastair. Maybe. The only way to know is to give him what his father never gave Edmund. A choice. Not a forced choice. Not a threat-backed choice. Not sign this or I'll destroy you. A real choice. With no one watching, no leverage, no safety net, I gathered the documents. All of them. The patent files from the vault, the originals, the photographs, the legal letters, Edmund's notebooks, the timeline I'd built, the copies I'd made. everything. If I gave this to him, I'd have nothing left. No leverage, no backup, no way to prove anything if he chose to destroy it all. If I was wrong about him, if he burned it, buried it, used it against me, I would lose. Completely. Forever. And if I was right about him, then I'd see it. In what he chose. In whether he gave the speech as written or told the truth. I'd know who he was when no one was forcing him to be good. The settlement deadline was in 4 hours. The gala was in 20. I wasn't going to the office. I wasn't going to the bank. I was going to his apartment. His space. Not the Rothwell world. The person beneath it. Edmund Cole died, believing he was nothing. Because no one gave him a chance to prove otherwise, I was about to give Leander Rothwell something my father never got, and I'd never been more afraid of being wrong. 18 hours to the gala. Settlement deadline? 2 hours. His apartment wasn't what I expected. Not a penthouse, not a monument to wealth. A brownstone floor-through Upper West Side. Bookshelves crowded with actual books. A piano in the corner that looked played. Art on the walls that looked chosen, not curated. The space of someone trying to be a person, not an heir. Leander opened the door. He looked like he hadn't slept either. Dark circles, hair disheveled, the armor of the tailored suit replaced by a sweater and jeans. He didn't speak, just stepped aside. I walked past him, set the folder on his coffee table. I could have sold these to the press. My voice was steadier than I felt. I could have filed suit. I could have walked into your gala tomorrow and burned your family's name to the ground in front of 500 people. He didn't move. I didn't. Because I keep thinking about who you'd be if you hadn't inherited this. So I'm giving you the choice I never got. He was looking at the folder like it might explode, like it might save him, like it might be both. Tomorrow night, you're supposed to stand at that podium and honor your father's legacy. You've seen what that legacy actually is. I stepped back. Give the speech as written. Celebrate the lie. Or tell the truth. It's yours now. He finally spoke. Why? His voice was raw. Why give it to me? You could have destroyed us. I looked at him. The exhaustion, the fear, the something else I'd been trying not to name since the coffee moment 3 days ago. Because I wanted to know if you're worth loving. And the only way to find out is to see what you do when no one's watching. He didn't speak. I didn't wait. You have until 7 p.m. tomorrow. I walked out. The door closed behind me. The elevator was empty. I pressed the button for the lobby and watched my reflection in the polished steel. A woman who'd just given away everything. 2 hours until the settlement deadline. I wasn't going to sign. I was going home, and I was going to wait. Midnight, Thursday. The settlement deadline passed. I didn't sign. In my Brooklyn apartment, I watched the clock turn from 11:59 to 12. The cursor on the NDA blinked once more and went dark. I closed the laptop. $20 million. Gone. My mother's security. Gone. My leverage. Already gone. On a coffee table in the Upper West Side. A text. From an unknown number. Fletcher Crane to Leander, forwarded. The Cole woman didn't sign. What are your instructions? And Leander's reply, also forwarded to me. No instructions. I'm handling it personally. Fletcher. The gala is in 16 hours. Leander. I know. 16 hours. He had my father's notebooks, my father's patents, my father's photograph. Edmund, young and smiling, before everything was taken. He had everything I'd spent 4 days building and 17 years waiting for. And in 16 hours, I'd know if he was worth what I'd risked. The number was my mother's. Sabine? Margaret's voice was strange, thick, like she'd been crying. Mom, are you okay? I read them, after you left. I finally read them. Silence. He wrote about you on every page. Her voice broke. He loved you so much. He couldn't find a way through. I know, Mom. I'm sorry I couldn't. I know. We cried, both of us. For the first time in 17 years, we cried for Edmund Cole together. When I hung up, my face was wet. My father's watch read 12:47 a.m. 16 hours until the gala. The settlement was dead. The documents were gone. The choice was Leander's. Now I'd find out who he was. 16 hours to the gala. The settlement expired. The documents are in Leander's hands. My mother finally spoke my father's name and wept. Somewhere in Manhattan, Leander Rothwell is staring at a leather folder full of crimes. His father's crimes. His inheritance of ruin. The speech is written. The podium is waiting. 500 guests are preparing their black tie. And in 16 hours, I'll know if the man I might love is worth the trust I just gave him. Or if I've made the final mistake in a long line of mistakes, trusting a Rothwell with a Cole's life. 12 hours to the gala. I woke without remembering I'd slept. My Brooklyn apartment looked the same as it had for 3 weeks, the same cramped kitchen, the same fire escape outside the bedroom window, the same water stain on the ceiling I kept meaning to report. But everything else was different. The table was empty now. No documents, no patent files, no notebooks filled with my father's handwriting. I'd given it all away. I called in sick to work. Did I even still have a job? The settlement wasn't signed. The documents were gone. I existed somewhere between employed and exposed, between survivor and saboteur. I cleaned, washed dishes that were already clean, made my bed 3 times, the rituals of a woman with nothing left to do but wait. My phone was silent. No text from Leander, no call, no indication of what he was thinking, what he was planning, who he was choosing to be. I found the photograph in my coat pocket, the one I'd kept, Edmund and Alistair shaking hands, my father's smile. He didn't know what was coming. He never got to find out if Alistair would choose differently. I was about to find out if the sun would. Edmund's watch on my wrist read 11:47 a.m., 7 hours and 13 minutes until the podium, until the speech, until the moment when Leander Rothwell would have to decide whether to celebrate his father's legacy or tell the truth about what it cost. I sat on my fire escape, watched the city move, thought about the word I'd said to him last night, worth loving. I'd meant it as a test. I was only now realizing it was also a confession. The gala would start at 7. 500 guests in black tie, crystal chandeliers, a century of Rothwell history on display. And somewhere in Manhattan, a man I might love was holding my father's life in his hands. 7 p.m. The Rothwell Centennial Gala. I wasn't there, but I could imagine it. The Waldorf Ballroom, crystal chandeliers catching light from 1,000 candles, 500 guests in black tie and designer gowns, press cameras staged along the perimeter. A century of Rothwell history displayed on screens, the buildings, the patents, the portrait of Alistair smiling like a man who'd won. The slides glowed on the screen. 100 years of innovation and integrity. At 7:15, the podium should have held Leander Rothwell. The speech was written. The moment was choreographed. The heir to an empire honoring his father's legacy. The podium was empty. The PR director checked her watch, whispered into her headset. Fletcher Crane, standing at the edge of the crowd, pulled out his phone, texted, "You're supposed to be speaking. Where are you?" No response. The string quartet played for too long. The celebration stalled. 500 guests in black tie shifted, murmured, checked their own phones. The speech that was supposed to celebrate Alistair Rothwell's legacy of innovation was never given. I found out later, from the news, from the whispers that reached me through the digital grapevine, that the podium stayed empty for 11 minutes before the PR director improvised. Mr. Rothwell was called away on a family matter. A family matter. That's one way to describe it. I didn't know where he was. I only knew where I needed to be. 7:45 p.m. I stood outside my mother's door in Queens. The same floral welcome mat, the same thin walls, the same apartment where Edmund Cole had been a ghost for 17 years. I'd come to check on her, to be with her when the clock struck gala time, when somewhere across the river the Rothwells would celebrate everything they'd taken from us. I opened the door and stopped. Leander Rothwell sat in my mother's living room. The leather folder, my father's folder, was open on the coffee table between them. He was still in his suit, no tie, hair disheveled. He looked like he'd driven here straight from wherever he was supposed to be. My mother's face was wet. She was holding the photograph of Edmund, young, smiling, alive. She was saying his name. Edmund always believed, her voice cracked. He always believed people could be better than their worst moments. Leander looked up, saw me in the doorway. "I'm supposed to be at the gala," he said. His voice was raw, giving a speech about legacy. This felt more important. I stood there, in my childhood doorway, watching a Rothwell sit in a Cole living room and choose truth over power. He'd told her everything. The patents, the takeover, the 17 years of silence, the company that had spent decades pretending Edmund Cole never existed. "I can't undo what happened," he said to her. Not to me, to her. But I can stop pretending. Margaret looked at the photograph in her hands, then at him, then at me. "He would have liked you," she said to Leander. "Edmund always believed people could be better than their worst moments." Is acknowledgement justice? Or is it just comfort dressed up as closure? And if you can't have both, which one lets you sleep? He stood to leave. He didn't presume to stay. This was a Cole moment, not a Rothwell one. At the door, I stopped him. "What happens now?" "I make a statement, establish a foundation in your father's name. Tell the truth, or as much as I can, without destroying 14,000 jobs. The board will probably remove me. Fletcher's already resigned. Stock will drop. Is it worth it?" He looked at me. The exhaustion, the cost already visible, the choice already made. "Ask me in a year." He left. I watched him go. The space between us felt different now. Not resolved, but real. I stayed with my mother for 2 hours. We looked at the notebooks together, really looked for the first time. She pointed out where Edmund had drawn my face as a baby in the margins. He'd been practicing how to spell my name when I was 3. At 11, I took the train back to Brooklyn. The gala was over by then. I'd know the details later. The headlines, the confused press coverage, the absence that spoke louder than any speech. Midnight. There was a knock at my door. I opened it. Leander stood in my hallway, still in the suit, tie still missing. He looked like a man who'd spent the evening dismantling his inheritance and had nowhere else to go. "I didn't know if you'd—" He stopped, started again. "I needed to see you." We stood in my doorway, the threshold between my world and his, between who we'd been and who we might become. "You went to her first," I said. "Before me, before the gala. You went to my mother first. She deserved to know, from someone who could answer questions. I owed her that. Your father owed her that. And since he can't—" "Thank you." I stepped back. He stepped in. The door closed behind him. What happened next wasn't about leverage or secrets or settlements. It wasn't about my father's patents or his father's crimes. It was just us. Two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of an inheritance neither of us asked for. I don't know what we are, don't know what we'll become. But that night, in my Brooklyn apartment, we stopped being enemies, stopped being symbols. We became something new, fragile, unfinished, but ours. 6 months later, the headlines called it a family emergency. The press release called it historical acknowledgement. The stock market called it a 12% correction. I called it the first honest thing a Rothwell had done in 100 years. The Cole Foundation for Independent Inventors opened its doors in April. $200 million in Edmund Cole's name, helping small inventors avoid what happened to my father. Not justice, but acknowledgement. Finally, acknowledgement. Fletcher Crane took a consulting position in Singapore. 12 time zones felt like the right amount. I didn't ask, and he didn't explain. Leander is still at Rothwell. Barely. The board meets next month to discuss his continued suitability for leadership. He might fight them. He might not. He says either way, he sleeps better now. My mother visits my father's grave again. After 17 years, she finally said his name out loud. She plants flowers now, brings a thermos of coffee, his favorite, the way he took it, sits and talks to him about nothing and everything. I asked her once if it helped, the acknowledgement, the foundation. Hearing the name Cole in the same sentence as Rothwell, without the word destroyed between them. She thought about it for a long time. "It doesn't bring him back," she said, "but it lets me remember him without the shame." But here's what I do know. 3 weeks into a job I took to survive, I found a key hidden behind a family portrait. And 72 hours later, I had to decide what mattered more: revenge or truth, vindication or trust. I chose to give a man I barely knew everything I had, every document, every copy, every piece of proof. I chose to see what he would do when no one was watching. He chose a folding chair in Queens, my mother's tears over 500 flutes of champagne. That's who he is. We sit on my fire escape now, evening light, city below. He asks me if acknowledgement is enough. I take his hand. My father's watch ticks on my wrist, finally keeping time again. Ask me in a year. Some questions don't have answers. Some wounds don't heal clean. But some beginnings are worth the wreckage that built them. This is American Billionaire Tales, where fortune meets fate. And sometimes, the greatest inheritance isn't what you're given. It's what you choose to give away. If you're still thinking about what you would have done, you're exactly who we make these for. Like, subscribe, share this with someone who needs to feel something real. And leave a comment. Would acknowledgement have been enough for you? Or would you have burned it all down? Because next time on American Billionaire Tales, dropping, intimate, the hook setting. Another secret, another inheritance, another choice that can't be unmade. Some families bury their mistakes. Others bury their children with them. See you soon.